The autumn morning painted San Francisco in shades of gold and amber, casting long shadows across the gleaming towers of the financial district. Sophia Wells stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, watching the city wake beneath her. At 40 years old, she commanded one of the most successful real estate empires on the West Coast. Her name was whispered with equal parts admiration and intimidation in boardrooms across the city. Her reflection in the glass showed a woman of striking beauty with sharp cheekbones and platinum blonde hair pulled into a severe bun that had become her signature. But behind those ice blue eyes lay a weariness that no amount of success could erase. 8 years. It had been 8 years since she'd become a single mother. 8 years since that phone call had shattered her world into pieces she was still trying to reassemble. The memory of that night remained vivid: the police officer's voice on the phone, the sterile hospital corridor, the moment she had to return home and face her 2-year-old daughter alone. Emma had been too young to understand why Daddy never came home, but old enough to feel the absence that would shape both their lives. Emma Wells was 12 now, a delicate preteen with her father's warm eyes that sparkled like sapphires when she smiled, which wasn't often enough these days. Born with a rare neurological condition that had stolen her voice before she could properly use it, Emma navigated the world in silence. The doctors had been optimistic at first, suggesting various treatments and therapies. But as years passed, it became clear that Emma's voice would remain locked inside her. Sophia had thrown herself into learning sign language with the same intensity she brought to hostile takeovers and million-dollar deals, but the fluid grace of native signers eluded her. Their conversations often dissolved into frustrated gestures and guessed meanings, leaving both mother and daughter feeling more isolated than connected. The intercom buzzed, pulling Sophia from her thoughts. Gwen Harper's voice filled the office warm and familiar after 5 years of working together. Gwen was more than an executive assistant. She was the closest thing Sophia had to a friend, though even that relationship was carefully managed, kept at arm's length like everything else in Sophia's life. "Your 9 o'clock is here." Also, Nakamura-san from Tokyo called. "He's concerned about the leadership transition, rumors. You know how personal this is for him. His grandson uses JSL Japanese Sign Language." Sophia's stomach dropped. The Japanese investor represented 40% of their expansion capital, and his commitment to inclusive design ran deeper than profit margins. "And don't forget, you promised Emma you'd take her to that new cafe on Valencia Street this morning." Sophia had forgotten about breakfast with Emma. Again, the guilt that had become her constant companion tightened its grip. "Tell Nakamura-san I'll call him at noon Tokyo time," she said, her decision swift. "And cancel the 9 o'clock. Actually, cancel everything until noon. I'm taking my daughter to breakfast." "The board won't like that," Gwen warned gently. "Victor Hamilton has been making noise about your divided attention lately. Let him." 30 minutes later, Sophia stood outside Emma's bedroom door in their Pacific Heights mansion, a house too large for two people who barely spoke. She knocked gently, then entered to find her daughter already dressed, sitting by the window with her sketchpad. Emma looked up, surprise flickering across her features when she saw her mother in casual clothes rather than the usual power suit. Sophia signed carefully, her movements deliberate. "Ready for our breakfast date?" Emma's face transformed, a smile breaking through like sunshine after rain. She nodded enthusiastically, grabbing her favorite purple backpack, decorated with painted butterflies she'd added herself. The drive from Pacific Heights to the Mission District was a journey through San Francisco's stark economic contrasts. Their sleek Tesla glided from the pristine streets lined with Victorian mansions past the bustle of downtown and into the vibrant mural-covered neighborhood that seemed to pulse with a different kind of energy. Sophia noticed Emma's face pressed against the window, drinking in the bright colors of street art that told stories of community and resistance. As they passed a particularly striking mural depicting hands spelling out justice in sign language, Emma tapped the window excitedly. Sophia nodded, but her attention was divided, half her mind still back in her office, wondering what fires were starting in her absence. The quarterly projections were due next week, and the West Side development was facing zoning complications. The new commercial property in Oakland had foundation issues that would cost millions to fix. And yet, watching Emma's animated face as they drove, Sophia wondered how many of these moments she had missed while buried in spreadsheets and conference calls. The realization sent a pang of regret through her chest, sharp enough to make her grip the steering wheel tighter. The cafe on Valencia Street was everything their house wasn't: warm, crowded, alive with the chatter of weekend families and the rich aroma of freshly ground coffee. Maple leaves pressed against the windows, their orange and red hues creating a natural stained glass effect. Sophia guided Emma to a corner table by the window, watching as her daughter immediately pulled out her sketch pad and began drawing the leaves dancing in the morning breeze. While Sophia stood at the counter ordering, she kept glancing back at Emma, noting how small and alone she looked at the table for four. Other children her age were chattering with their parents, sharing jokes and stories, while Emma remained in her bubble of silence. The familiar ache returned, the one that reminded Sophia of all the ways she was failing as a mother. She ordered Emma's favorite hot chocolate with extra whipped cream and a cinnamon latte for herself. The barista, a young woman with vibrant blue hair and multiple piercings, smiled warmly as she took the order. "Your daughter's quite the artist," she commented, nodding toward Emma. "I've been watching her sketch. She's got a real eye for detail." Sophia turned, following the barista's gaze. Emma was indeed creating something beautiful. The autumn leaves seemed to dance across her paper with a vitality that made them more real than the actual leaves outside the window. When had her daughter developed this talent? Had she been so absorbed in quarterly reports and shareholder meetings that she'd missed this evolution? "Yes, she is," Sophia replied, a mixture of pride and regret coloring her voice. "Thank you for noticing." The bell above the door chimed, and a man entered with a young boy. The child, perhaps 6 or 7, had sandy brown hair that stuck up at odd angles despite what appeared to be recent attempts to tame it. He wore a dinosaur sweater and carried a well-loved stuffed triceratops. His father followed, tall and lean with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, dressed in worn jeans and a flannel shirt that spoke of weekend comfort rather than corporate ambition. Before anyone could react, the boy had bounced over to Emma's table, his attention caught by her drawing. Sophia tensed, ready to intervene, her protective instincts flaring. But then something extraordinary happened. The man approached calmly and, instead of speaking, his hands began to move in fluid, graceful motions. He was signing to Emma, asking if his son Lucas could see her beautiful artwork. Emma's transformation was instantaneous and breathtaking. Her entire body seemed to light up from within, her hands flying in response. No longer the hesitant, uncertain movements she used with her mother, but confident, expressive, alive. She was telling him about the leaves, about how each one was different, like snowflakes or fingerprints. The man listened intently, nodding, responding with equal enthusiasm, his facial expressions and eyebrows adding grammatical nuance that Sophia had never mastered. "I'm Nathan Carter," the man said when she returned to the table, his voice gentle with a slight southern drawl. "This is Lucas. I hope you don't mind him joining Emma." He saw her drawing and, well, he's never been good at staying put when art is involved. "How do you," Sophia began, gesturing vaguely at the sign language. "My mother was a teacher at the California School for the Deaf for 30 years, Nathan explained, his hands unconsciously moving as he spoke. "I grew up signing before I could properly talk. It's like a first language for me." Actually, it was my first language. Mom always said, hearing people learn to listen with their ears. But deaf culture teaches you to listen with your whole being. Lucas had pulled out his own crayons and was adding touches to Emma's drawing with her enthusiastic permission. They were creating a story together, Emma signing the narrative, while Lucas added visual elements. "She's incredibly expressive." Nathan continued, watching the children. "Her vocabulary is advanced for her age. And look at her facial grammar, the way she raises her eyebrows for questions, furrows them for emphasis. She's not just signing, she's truly speaking ASL." The compliment stung because Sophia knew it wasn't deserved. She watched Emma's animated conversation with Nathan, the way her daughter's shoulders relaxed, how her usually guarded expression had opened like a flower in spring. "I'm still learning," Sophia admitted. "It's harder than I expected. Sometimes I feel like I'm failing her." Nathan turned to her, then his brown eyes warmed with understanding. "Every parent feels that way. Trust me, I know. Lucas's mom passed when he was 3. There are days I have no idea what I'm doing. But showing up, trying, that matters more than being perfect." "There's a family class on Saturday mornings," he mentioned casually. "Parents and children learning together. Emma might enjoy having other kids to practice with. And you could improve your fluency in a supportive environment." Before Sophia could respond, her phone buzzed insistently. 3 missed calls from the office, 2 from board members, and a text from Gwen that simply read, "Tech blogs picked up photos of you at cafe. Hamilton calling emergency meeting. Nakamura-san wants answers now." The real world was crashing and threatening everything she'd built. But looking at Emma's joy, something shifted in Sophia's priorities. I should go, she said, already standing, already retreating. Thank you for talking with her. Nathan stood too, pulling out a simple business card. The class information is on there. No pressure, but Emma would be welcome anytime. You both would be. As they drove home, Emma's hands moved excitedly, telling her mother about Lucas and his dinosaur, and how his father knew all the special signs for different types of dinosaurs. Sophia tried to follow, but Emma's signing was too fast, too fluid, too filled with vocabulary Sophia had never learned. The gap between them had never felt wider. Back at the mansion, Emma ran straight to her room, presumably to continue drawing or to research the sign language class. Sophia retreated to her home office, a sanctuary of polished mahogany and leather designed to intimidate and impress. She sat heavily in her chair, Nathan's business card still in her hand. The Wells Estates logo on her desktop screen seemed to mock her, the stylized W forming a fortress, a barrier. Wasn't that what she had built? A fortress to protect her success, her heart, her daughter. But fortresses kept things out as much as they kept things in. Had she been protecting Emma or isolating her? Her phone rang again. Victor Hamilton's name flashing on the screen. She let it go to voicemail. Instead, she pulled up her browser and typed, American Sign Language Family Classes, San Francisco. The search returned dozens of results, including the community center from Nathan's card. She clicked through to the website, reading about their inclusive approach, their focus on deaf culture, as well as language. Her finger hovered over the registration button when her email pinged with a message marked urgent from Victor, the subject line reading board concerns, immediate response required. With a sigh, she closed the browser and opened the email. The week that followed was a battlefield. Tech blogs ran headlines, distracted CEO is Wells Estates losing focus. Victor Hamilton leaked concerns to investors about leadership stability. Nakamura-san's team scheduled a video call demanding reassurances. But even as she fought to save her company, Sophia's mind kept drifting to that moment in the cafe, to Emma's joy, to Nathan's patient hands. By Wednesday, the pressure had intensified. 3 major investors had called with concerns. The stock had dipped 2 points. Sophia had spent hours in meetings reassuring, explaining, defending decisions that had seemed clear at the time, but now appeared murky under the harsh spotlight of scrutiny. In her rare moments at home, she tried to engage with Emma, but their communication remained stilted, limited to basic signs and frustrated repetition. Emma would eventually give up, retreating to her room, where Sophia would later find her drawing or watching videos of ASL storytellers on her tablet. Thursday afternoon, Gwen set a fresh coffee on Sophia's desk along with a tablet showing the latest article. They're calling you the absent CEO. Victor has convinced 3 board members to demand a performance review. Sophia looked down, surprised to find Nathan's card in her hand, edges soft from repeated handling. He teaches sign language, she said finally. He talked to Emma like it was the most natural thing in the world. She was so happy, Gwen, so happy. So take her to the class, Gwen said simply. The Nakamura deal will still be there Monday. Your daughter's childhood won't. Gwen's voice was firm. I've watched you build walls for 5 years. Maybe it's time to build bridges instead. That evening, Sophia came home to find Emma at the kitchen table working on homework with the nanny. Her daughter looked up briefly, then back down, the moment of hope quickly extinguished. Emma Sophia signed, sitting down beside her. Would you like to go to a sign language class on Saturday with other children? The transformation was immediate. Emma's hands flew in excited response. Could Lucas be there? Could they really go? Could they go every week? Yes. Sophia signed, her heart lightening at her daughter's joy. I'll make sure of it. She spent the rest of the evening practicing basic signs, watching tutorial videos, determined to do better. When she signed good night to Emma later, her movements were still awkward, but her commitment was clear. Saturday morning arrived gray and misty, San Francisco, wrapped in fog that rolled in from the Pacific like a living thing. The community center was in the Mission District, a colorful building covered in murals depicting hands and various signs. Sophia felt out of place in her designer jeans among the diverse group of families gathering. A mix of emotions churned inside her as she guided Emma through the doors, anxiety at entering a space where she was not the expert, where her wealth and status meant nothing. Hope that this might open a door for Emma. Guilt that it had taken her 8 years to find this place. But then she saw him. Nathan was at the front setting up visual aids. Lucas was helping, tangling himself in a banner that read, "Every voice matters, even silent ones." When Nathan looked up and saw them, his smile was like sunshine breaking through fog. The class was a revelation. 15 families, all at different stages of their sign language journey, learning together. Nathan was a natural teacher, explaining not just vocabulary, but the culture behind it. ASL isn't English on the hands, he explained, demonstrating. It's a spatial language. Watch how I establish people in space, then refer back to them. See how my face isn't just expressing emotion, but providing grammar. He demonstrated a simple conversation showing how to set up people in specific areas of the signing space, then referring back to those locations to indicate who was doing what. Sophia watched, fascinated by the elegant efficiency of it, so different from the linear nature of spoken language. During break time, something magical and unexpected happened. Emma, who had spent 8 years as the quiet observer, the child who stayed at the edges of groups, suddenly stood up. She tapped the table for attention as she'd seen Nathan do the sound sharp and confident in the community center's main room. The other children turned to look, and instead of shrinking back, as she once would have, Emma stepped forward with growing confidence that seemed to bloom from somewhere deep inside. She organized a signing game teaching the other children how to play Silent Story Circle. She demonstrated with perfect clarity each child would add one signed sentence to build a collaborative story. But there were rules. They had to use classifiers to show size and movement, not just finger spelling or basic signs. They had to incorporate facial expressions for emotion, not as an afterthought, but as integral grammar. They had to maintain spatial consistency. If a character was established on the right, they stayed on the right. A younger boy, maybe 5 years old, struggled with the concept of classifiers. Instead of giving up or calling for an adult, Emma knelt beside him, her movements patient and clear. She showed him how her flat hand could become a car, how 2 fingers walking could show a person moving, how the speed and path of movement told as much story as the signs themselves. When he successfully showed a bird flying over a house using the correct classifiers, his face lit up with pride, and Emma's smile was radiant. Sophia watched her daughter transform from silent observer to confident leader, guiding younger children with patience, encouraging hesitant parents to join in. One mother struggling with the spatial aspects received Emma's gentle correction, the girl showing her how to maintain consistent placement of story elements in the signing space. It was like watching a flower that had been kept in shade suddenly placed in sunlight, blooming with a vigor that had always been there waiting. She's a natural teacher, Nathan said, appearing beside Sophia with 2 cups of coffee, his voice soft with admiration. Look how she adjusts her signing speed for different skill levels, how she uses visual feedback to encourage them. She's not just teaching signs, she's teaching confidence, community belonging. I've been holding her back, Sophia said quietly, the admission painful but necessary, like setting a broken bone. I've been so afraid of failing her, so terrified of her being hurt that I've kept her in a bubble. Our bubble, really. Just the 2 of us in that big house protecting each other from a world that might not understand. Fear makes us do that. Nathan replied, his voice carrying the weight of his own experience. After Lucas's mom died, I barely left the house for 6 months. I was terrified that if I let him out of my sight, something would happen to him too. I thought I was keeping him safe, but I was keeping him from living. Kids need more than our protection. They need community challenge, the chance to discover who they are beyond our fears. Emma's game had evolved now, with 12 children participating, creating an elaborate story about a deaf superhero who saved the world through visual communication. The children were laughing, their hands flying, their faces animated with expression that transcended the need for sound. Parents watched with tears in their eyes, seeing their children not as limited by deafness, but empowered by a different way of being in the world. After class, the 4 of them went to lunch at a small taqueria. The children sat together, Emma teaching Lucas new signs while they shared chips and salsa. This is nice, Nathan said simply, and Sophia knew he meant more than just lunch. It is, she agreed, allowing herself to relax for the first time in longer than she could remember. As the children drew on their placemats, Nathan watched them with an expression Sophia couldn't quite read. After Beth died, he said quietly, not looking at her, I promised myself Lucas would be enough, that I wouldn't need anyone else. Wouldn't risk. He trailed off, his hands unconsciously forming the sign for fear. But watching him with Emma, seeing how happy he is to have a friend who just accepts him completely, I realize I've been keeping him in a bubble too. My grief bubble. He finally looked at Sophia, vulnerability clear in his eyes. I'm terrified of letting people in again, but maybe being terrified is better than being alone. That weekend, her phone exploded with messages. A photographer had captured them at lunch, and tech blogs were running wild with speculation. CEO's new priority: romance over revenue. Victor Hamilton called an emergency board meeting for Monday. Sunday evening, Sophia sat in her home office preparing for battle. Gwen arrived with files and strategies, but also with advice. You could fight this the old way, Gwen said, or you could try something different. Show them that opening up doesn't make you weak. It makes you stronger. Sophia looked up at the wall of awards and accolades that decorated her office: plaques and trophies, commemorating deals closed, buildings erected, fortunes made. But none of them captured the light in Emma's eyes when she taught that little boy to sign bird, or the way her hands had danced through the air telling stories that needed no voice. Maybe it's time to show the board what I've really learned, she said, an idea taking shape. Maybe it's time they understood what I've been missing all along. Monday's board meeting was tense enough to cut with a knife. The boardroom on the 40th floor had never felt more like an arena, with its floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a view of the city Sophia had helped build. Victor led the charge about lack of focus and questionable priorities. His PowerPoint slides showed paparazzi photos from the cafe, from the taqueria, from the art show. The room full of men in identical charcoal suits stared at her with disapproval, their faces masks of corporate concern hiding personal ambitions. This is about optics, Victor said, clicking to a slide showing stock projections. Our investors need stability, not a CEO having a midlife crisis. Is that what you think this is? Sophia asked calmly, though inside she felt a fire building, not of anger but of clarity. What else would you call it? You're abandoning million-dollar dinners for finger-painting exhibitions. The room murmured agreement. These men who had never once asked about Emma in 8 years, who scheduled board meetings during school plays and parent-teacher conferences without a second thought. Sophia listened to each complaint, each thinly veiled threat, then stood. But instead of her usual PowerPoint, instead of graphs and charts and projections, she began to sign as she spoke, her hands moving fluidly, painting pictures in the air. Gentlemen, let me show you something. She pulled up their latest market research on the main screen. 40 million Americans use ASL. That's 40 million potential customers we've been ignoring because we couldn't speak their language. Another 20 million are family members, friends, colleagues who interact with the deaf community daily. She moved around the room as she spoke, using the spatial referencing Nathan had taught her, literally placing different market segments in different areas of the room, making the invisible visible. While you've been worried about optics, I've been seeing opportunities you've been blind to. She pulled up her tablet, wirelessly displaying her screen. This weekend, while you think I was distracted, I was actually conducting market research. Do you know what percentage of commercial buildings in San Francisco are genuinely accessible to the deaf community? 3%. 3. She showed them her plans properties with visual fire alarms as standard video phone systems, in every unit common areas designed with sight lines that allowed for sign language conversations across rooms. She showed them the partnership proposals from deaf-owned businesses, the endorsements from disability rights organizations, the premium rates such properties could command. I'm not distracted. I'm seeing our business through new eyes. I'm finding blue oceans in red markets. She looked directly at Victor, her gaze steady. You say I'm unfocused because I'm learning to communicate with my daughter. I say that learning has taught me to see our entire industry differently. If you can't see the value in that, perhaps you're the one who's lost focus. She pulled up one final slide, a photo Gwen had taken at the ASL class. Sophia and Emma signing together, both laughing, surrounded by other families. This isn't a distraction from my work. This is the reason for it. And if you can't understand that, if you can't see that a CEO who understands multiple ways of communicating, multiple ways of seeing the world, is an asset, not a liability, then perhaps you're not the board this company needs for its next chapter. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Nakamura-san's face appeared on the conference screen from Tokyo. She'd forgotten he was dialed in, watching everything. Well, San, he said, his voice carrying the weight of billions in investment power. In Japan, we have a saying, the bamboo that bends is stronger than the oak that resists. You have shown you can bend without breaking. This is leadership. He paused, his next words careful but clear. Nakamura Industries will increase our investment by 20%, contingent on your inclusive development initiative moving forward. In Hamilton-san, he looked directly at Victor through the camera. Perhaps it is time for you to learn a new language as well. That evening, she found Emma in her room, video calling Lucas teaching his stuffed triceratops sign language. Mom, Emma sighed when she noticed her. Nathan invited us camping next month. Real camping with tents and stars. Can we go? Yes, Sophia signed back. We can. Wednesday brought an unexpected text from Nathan. Lucas's school is having an art show Friday. He wanted to invite Emma. No pressure, but you're both welcome. Sophia had a crucial client dinner Friday, a deal worth millions. The old her wouldn't have hesitated. She canceled the dinner, sending her CFO instead. Friday evening at Lucas's school was beautiful chaos. Lucas dragged them to his painting, two houses with a rainbow bridge connecting them. It's our houses, he signed to Emma, so we can visit whenever we want. I haven't done this in a long time, Sophia admitted to Nathan as they watched their children. Been close to someone, let someone in. Neither have I, Nathan replied, but maybe we could figure it out together. As they stood side by side watching their children together, Sophia felt something inside her shift and settle. For the first time in 8 years, the weight she carried seemed lighter, shared between two pairs of shoulders instead of borne alone. The world outside, with its board meetings and market projections and paparazzi, seemed distant and unimportant compared to the world unfolding right here, painted in the bright colors of children's art and shaped by hands speaking a language she was only beginning to understand. The weeks that followed their first sign language class transformed Emma in ways Sophia had never imagined possible. It wasn't just her growing fluency in ASL that changed, but a newfound confidence that seemed to radiate from within. Each Saturday morning became sacred, a time when Emma would practically leap from bed, eager for the community and connection she found at the center. For Sophia, the classes remained challenging. Her corporate mind struggled with the spatial concepts the grammar expressed through eyebrows and cheeks rather than word order. She felt clumsy and inadequate beside native signers like Nathan, who moved with a fluid grace that made complex concepts look effortless. But she kept showing up, kept practicing, driven by the sight of Emma's blossoming spirit. The business world, however, was not so accommodating of her new priorities. Victor Hamilton continued his campaign, subtly questioning her commitment in board meetings, suggesting to investors that perhaps Wells Estates needed more focused leadership. Each day brought fresh battles, new fires to extinguish. On the fourth Saturday after their first class, Sophia received an alert on her phone during the lesson. Another leaked memo from Victor to the board calling for an emergency vote of no confidence. Her stomach tightened, but when she looked up and saw Emma demonstrating a complex sign sequence to Lucas, her decision was clear. The email could wait 3 more hours. After class, as they'd begun to do regularly, the four of them went to lunch at what had become their taqueria. The children were now inseparable, sharing jokes in a blend of signs and laughter that created its own language of friendship. Watching you with them is remarkable, Sophia said as they waited for their food. You never talk down to them. Nathan smiled his eyes following the children's animated conversation. My mother always said that deaf children aren't language deprived, just surrounded by people who don't speak their language. Once you bridge that gap, you realize they're not missing anything except the opportunity to be heard. The waiter arrived with their food street tacos, with handmade tortillas, grilled vegetables, and fresh salsa. Sophia had developed a surprising fondness for the casual eatery, so different from the Michelin-starred restaurants where she typically conducted business lunches. Did you always want to teach? She asked, genuinely curious about the path that had led Nathan to become such a skilled instructor. Actually, no, Nathan laughed softly. I studied architecture at Berkeley, specialized in acoustic design, ironically enough. I was working for a major firm when Beth, my wife, got pregnant with Lucas. He paused, his expression growing distant. After she died, I couldn't go back. The buildings I designed, concert halls, theaters, they were all about sound, about perfect acoustics. And suddenly, sound became irrelevant. What mattered was creating spaces where Lucas could thrive, where communication didn't depend on hearing. What happened to her? Sophia asked gently. If you don't mind me asking. Car accident. Nathan's hands stilled on the table. Drunk driver. She was 8 months pregnant with our second child. The doctors saved Lucas, but He didn't need to finish. Sophia reached across the table, her hand covering his. No wonder he had recognized her own grief so easily. They were members of the same terrible club, one no one ever chose to join. I understand, she said simply. I know you do, he replied, turning his hand to briefly squeeze hers. The moment was interrupted by Lucas tugging at his father's sleeve, proudly showing off a new sign Emma had taught him. The adults shifted their attention to the children, the shared understanding between them deepening without need for further words. As they prepared to leave, Nathan hesitated. There's an exhibition at the Exploratorium next weekend, Seeing Sound. It's all about how deaf people experience music through vibration and visual patterns. Lucas is excited about it. I wondered if maybe you and Emma might like to join us. Sophia found herself smiling, a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with the spicy food. We'd love to. Only after she'd said it did she realize she hadn't mentally checked her calendar, first a small revolution in her carefully scheduled life. The following week brought mounting pressure at Wells Estates. Victor's campaign had gained traction with 2 more board members, and the quarterly report showed a slight downturn, nothing catastrophic, but enough to fuel the whispers about her leadership. The Nakamura deal remained secure, but other investors were growing skittish. Sophia worked late most nights trying to shore up support, develop counter-strategies, protect what she'd built. She was exhausted fighting on multiple fronts, but strangely she felt more clarity than she had in years. For the first time since becoming a single mother, yet priorities weren't constantly at war with each other. Friday evening, she left the office earlier than usual, surprising Emma and the nanny with her arrival. I thought we might practice for tomorrow. She signed, still halting but more confident than before. Emma's expression brightened. She led Sophia to the couch, pulling out a tablet with video tutorials she'd been watching. For the next hour, they worked together on signs related to science and discovery, preparing for their museum trip. When Emma patiently corrected her mother's finger placement or hand orientation, Sophia felt a shift in their dynamic. Her daughter was becoming her teacher, and she found she didn't mind at all. The Exploratorium was crowded with weekend visitors, but the special exhibition had a separate entrance. Nathan and Lucas were waiting by the doors. Lucas clutching a small notebook for sketching and bouncing with barely contained excitement. Emma immediately signed a greeting, her hands flying in enthusiastic questions about what they might see inside. Lucas responded just as rapidly, the 2 children creating their own bubble of communication. How's the board situation? Nathan asked as they followed the children inside. Sophia raised an eyebrow. You've been Googling me. His cheeks colored slightly. I was curious about what you were up against. Victor Hamilton seems determined. That's one word for him, Sophia replied dryly. He's never forgiven me for getting the CEO position instead of him 5 years ago. He thinks Wells Estates should focus exclusively on luxury developments. My inclusive design initiatives don't fit his vision. And now he's using your time with Emma as ammunition. She nodded. But enough about corporate politics. I didn't come here to talk about Victor Hamilton. The exhibition was fascinating, large installations that translated sound waves into visual patterns, bass vibrations you could feel through specialized flooring, and light displays that pulsed in rhythm with music. Emma and Lucas moved from exhibit to exhibit, their faces alight with wonder. Halfway through, they encountered a circular room with a central platform. A guide explained that it was a sensory symphony experience. Visitors stood on the platform, while sound, light, and vibration combined to create music you could see and feel rather than hear. Lucas had already joined other children on the platform, but Emma hesitated, suddenly shy. Nathan signed encouragement, but she shook her head, stepping back. Sophia knelt beside her daughter. What's wrong? She signed. Emma's hands moved hesitantly. Everyone will watch me. I don't know how to dance to music I can't hear. Sophia considered this, then signed, neither do I. Shall we learn together? Before she could reconsider, Sophia stepped onto the platform, holding out her hand. After a moment's hesitation, Emma took it, allowing herself to be led to the center beside Lucas. The symphony began, lights pulsing in blues and purples, the floor vibrating with bass notes, patterns of color swirling above them like visual music. At first, both Sophia and Emma stood awkwardly, uncertain how to respond. Then Sophia noticed Nathan on the sidelines, signing rhythmically, translating the music's beat into movement. Following his lead, she began to sway, then to step in time with the vibrations. Emma watched, then gradually joined in, her natural grace emerging as she connected with the rhythm, through her feet, through the lights, through Nathan's guiding signs. By the symphony's crescendo, both mother and daughter were dancing freely, Emma twirling under Sophia's arm, their movements synchronized with Lucas's joyful hopping. When the music ended, they were breathless and laughing, Emma's face glowing with accomplishment. As they left the exhibit, Nathan touched Sophia's elbow lightly. "That was beautiful what you did in there." "I just followed your lead," she replied. "No," he said, his expression serious. "You showed her that it's okay to be vulnerable, to try something new, even if you might look foolish. That's a powerful gift from a parent." Before Sophia could respond, her phone vibrated. Checking it, she saw Gwen's name with a text, "Emergency at Westside Project. Foundation issues worse than reported. Need decision ASAP." "Duty calls," Nathan asked, noting her expression. Sophia sighed. "Always. I'm sorry, I need to make some calls." "Go ahead," he said. "The kids and I will check out the bubble exhibit. Take your time." She found a quiet corner and spent 20 minutes on the phone with her development team working through options for the troubled project. When she finally ended the call, she turned to find Emma watching her from a distance, her expression unreadable. Sophia signed an apology, but Emma shrugged and turned away, rejoining Lucas at the exhibit. The moment of connection they'd shared on the dance floor seemed suddenly fragile, threatened by the constant pull of Sophia's other world. They finished the museum visit and they had ice cream together, the children's enthusiasm gradually restoring the afternoon's warmth. As they prepared to part in the parking lot, Nathan mentioned that the community center was hosting a special event the following weekend, a silent auction fundraiser with performances by deaf artists. The children begged to attend, and plans were made before Sophia could consider the board meeting scheduled for the same day. She would find a way to make it work. Some priorities were becoming non-negotiable. Driving home, Emma was unusually quiet even for her. When they arrived at the mansion, she disappeared to her room without their usual Saturday evening movie ritual. Sophia followed, knocking gently before entering. Emma sat by the window, her sketch pad open to a drawing of the four of them at the museum. The image was striking, Lucas and Emma in the foreground, full of motion and color, while Sophia stood slightly apart, half her body fading into a swirl that resembled her phone. "Is that how you see me?" Sophia signed, her heart constricting. Emma didn't answer directly. Instead, she signed, "Are you going to marry Nathan?" The question caught Sophia completely off guard. "What? No, we're just friends." Why would you think that? Emma's hands moved matter-of-factly. "The nanny watches romance movies. The parents always look at each other the way you look at him." Sophia felt heat rise to her cheeks, unsure how to respond to her daughter's unexpected observation. "We enjoy each other's company," she signed carefully. "But we're not. It's complicated, Emma. Because of work," Sophia sighed, "partly, and partly because we both have painful pasts. It's difficult to open up again after you've been hurt." Emma considered this, then signed with the simple wisdom of childhood. "But it hurts being alone too, out of the mouths of babes, or in this case from the hands of a 12-year-old who saw more clearly than Sophia had expected." The week that followed brought fresh challenges. The foundation issues at the Westside Development had doubled the project's cost. Two major investors pulled out after Victor's whisper campaign. The quarterly board meeting loomed threatening to become a referendum on Sophia's leadership. Yet through it all, Sophia found herself drawing strength from Saturday's memory, from Emma dancing to music she couldn't hear, from Nathan's steady guidance, from the growing certainty that she was finally beginning to understand what truly mattered. Thursday afternoon, Gwen entered her office with a concerned expression. "Victor's called for a formal vote of no confidence at tomorrow's board meeting," she said, placing a folder on Sophia's desk. "I've gathered all the financial reports, investor statements, and project projections. If you work through the night, you might be able to build a defense." Sophia opened the folder, scanning the documents. Then, to Gwen's evident surprise, she closed it again. "Book me a meeting with Nakamura-san for 7 a.m. tomorrow," she said, "and call the Westside team. I want to revise the development plan. If we're going to rebuild the foundation, we might as well redesign the entire project." Gwen blinked. "You want to change direction now?" "With the board meeting at 2. "Exactly, because the board meeting is at 2. And send this to the design team." Sophia pulled out a sketch pad, Emma's influence, and quickly drew a concept apartment buildings surrounding a central courtyard with wide sightlines between units, visual alarm systems, and community spaces designed for both hearing and deaf residents. "This is the new Westside vision. Inclusive housing with universal design principles. Tell them I need preliminary renderings by tomorrow morning." As Gwen left to execute these instructions, Sophia turned to her computer and began typing. Not a defense of her leadership, but a manifesto, a vision for Wells Estates that expanded beyond luxury developments to embrace a market they'd been ignoring, a community they could serve while still maintaining profitability. She worked late into the night, fueled by clarity and purpose rather than fear. When she finally drove home, the mansion was dark except for a single light in Emma's room. Sophia climbed the stairs quietly, intending just to peek in, but found her daughter still awake reading a book about famous deaf artists. "You should be asleep," Sophia signed. Emma shrugged. "Couldn't. Thinking too much." "About what? The silent auction? Lucas says there will be deaf dancers. I want to dance too." Sophia sat on the edge of the bed. "You dance beautifully at the museum." Emma's hands moved hesitantly. That was different. Private. This would be in front of everyone. Sophia understood the fear behind her daughter's words, the same fear that had kept Emma isolated for years, that had kept Sophia herself from taking risks with her heart. "You know," she signed, "courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing something anyway." Emma considered this. "Like you at the board meeting tomorrow?" Sophia's eyebrows rose in surprise. "How did you know about that? I heard Gwen on the phone with you." Emma's expression grew serious. "Are they going to fire you because you spend time with me now?" The question pierced Sophia's heart. "No, sweetheart. And even if they tried, I wouldn't let them. Some things are more important than being CEO." She meant it, she realized. Somewhere in the past weeks, her definition of success had fundamentally shifted. The next morning arrived with gray skies threatening rain. Sophia dressed carefully, her most impeccable suit, but with a colorful scarf Emma had given her for her birthday. Armor with a touch of humanity. The video call with Nakamura went better than expected. The Japanese investor was intrigued by the inclusive housing concept, particularly when Sophia explained how it aligned with traditional Japanese values of community and multi-generational living. He agreed to not only maintain his investment, but to be present virtually at the board meeting as a show of support. The design team delivered the renderings as requested, beautiful visualizations of the reimagined Westside development, with detailed notes on how the inclusive features would actually reduce long-term costs while opening up new market segments. Armed with these materials and her manifesto, Sophia arrived at the board meeting 10 minutes early. Victor was already there, huddled with his supporters, his expression smug with anticipated victory. He barely acknowledged Sophia's entrance, a dismissal that would have infuriated her weeks ago, but now seemed merely sad, the action of a man who had never learned to listen with his whole being. The meeting began with the usual formalities. Financial reports were reviewed, showing the slight downturn, but also highlighting the potential of new initiatives. Victor waited until the agenda reached leadership review before making his move. Fellow board members, he began, his voice grave with practiced concern. "Wells Estates has been a market leader for 15 years because of our unwavering focus on luxury development and premium clients. Recently, however, our CEO seems to have developed other interests." He clicked to a slide showing Sophia at the sign language class, another of her lunch with Nathan and the children, a third of her dancing at the Exploratorium. "These are not the activities of a leader committed to shareholder value," he continued. "While Ms. Wells enjoys her personal journey, our stock has dropped 3 points. 2 major investors have expressed concerns about leadership stability. The Westside project is millions over budget." He turned to face Sophia directly. "I move for a vote of no confidence in Sophia Wells as CEO with immediate effect." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Sophia, waiting for her defense, perhaps expecting panic or anger or desperate negotiation. Instead, she rose calmly and walked to the front of the room. "Before we vote, I'd like to show you something." She connected her tablet to the display system, bringing up the new Westside renderings. "This is the future of Wells Estates, a future that expands our market while maintaining our commitment to quality and profitability." She moved through the slides, methodically explaining how inclusive design created buildings that worked better for everyone, not just those with disabilities. She presented market research showing the untapped potential of the deaf community and their families. She displayed financial projections, demonstrating how the reimagined Westside development would actually increase returns in the long term. Then she clicked to a different kind of slide, Emma at 5 years old, alone on a playground, while other children played together. "This was my daughter 3 years ago," she said quietly. isolated not by her inability to hear, but by our inability to communicate with her. Another slide, Emma leading the signing game at the community center, surrounded by friends. This is my daughter now. The difference isn't in her condition, which hasn't changed. The difference is in her access to community, to understanding, to being truly seen. She looked directly at Victor. You think my personal journey, as you call it, has distracted me from building value? I would argue it has finally shown me how to build value that matters not just in real estate, but in lives, in communities, in a future where Wells Estates stands for innovation, inclusion, and yes, profitability with purpose. She clicked to her final slide, the manifesto she'd written the night before titled, Building Beyond Barriers, the Wells Estates Vision. My daughter taught me that there are many ways to speak to hear to understand. I'm bringing that wisdom to our company. If that's not the direction you want Wells Estates to go, then by all means, vote me out today. The silence that followed was profound. Even Victor seemed taken aback by the clarity and conviction in her presentation. Before anyone could respond, the conference screen activated showing Nakamura-san from Tokyo. If I may address the board, he said formally. Having reviewed Ms. Wells's new vision for the Westside development, Nakamura Industries is prepared to increase our investment by 30%, specifically to fund the inclusive design innovations. We believe this represents not just ethical business practice, but a significant market opportunity. His gaze shifted to Victor. In our experience, Mr. Hamilton's true leadership is not about maintaining course, but about seeing opportunities others miss. Ms. Wells has demonstrated such vision. I trust this board is wise enough to recognize its value. The vote when it came was 7-4 in Sophia's favor. Victor's face darkened with fury, but he said nothing as the meeting concluded. The battle wasn't over. Sophia knew he would regroup, find new angles of attack, but she had won this round decisively. As the board members filed out, Gwen approached with a small smile. Congratulations. Though I'm not sure who that woman was. I've never seen you risk everything on a vision before. Sophia gathered her materials, a curious lightness in her chest despite the tension of the past hours. Maybe I finally found something worth risking everything for. She checked her watch. If she hurried, she could make it to the community center in time for the start of the silent auction. Some commitments couldn't be broken, not even for corporate warfare. The community center was transformed when Sophia arrived, the utilitarian space now elegant with string lights, artwork by deaf artists displayed on every wall, a small stage set up for performances. Emma and Lucas were already there with Nathan, the children excitedly examining the auction items. When Emma spotted her mother, she rushed over, hands flying with questions. Did they fire you? Are you still the boss? Did the mean man win? Sophia laughed, signing back, I'm still CEO. The mean man did not win, and I made it here in time, just like I promised. Emma's smile was worth every difficult moment of the day. She tugged Sophia toward a display of student artwork, proudly showing a collaborative piece she and Lucas had created, a cityscape, where all the buildings had features designed for both deaf and hearing residents. Sophia recognized elements from her own sketches for the West Side project, reimagined through her daughter's creative vision. Nathan approached 2 glasses of sparkling cider in hand. He offered one to Sophia with a questioning look. You seem lighter. Good board meeting? She took a sip, savoring the sweet effervescence. Let's just say I found my voice today. He smiled, understanding the deeper meaning behind her words. The children want to watch the performances. They're saving us seats. As they moved toward the performance area, Nathan's hand brushed against hers, not quite taking it, but a tentative connection. After a moment's hesitation, Sophia let her fingers intertwine with his, a silent acknowledgement of what was growing between them. The first performance was a deaf poet signing a piece about belonging with an interpreter, voicing the words for hearing audience members. The poem spoke of bridges between worlds, of the richness found in the spaces between sound and silence. Sophia found herself moved by words that would have seemed abstract to her just weeks ago, but now resonated with personal meaning. During the second performance, a dance piece set to vibrations rather than audible music, Emma leaned over to Sophia. I want to dance in the next show. She signed her expression, both determined and vulnerable. Will you help me practice? Sophia squeezed her daughter's hand, a promise without words. As the dancers on stage moved in perfect synchronization without hearing the music, Sophia felt a profound sense of rightness settle over her. The path forward would not be easy, not with Victor plotting his next move, not with the challenges of balancing her corporate responsibilities with her growing personal life, not with the ongoing journey of connecting with Emma. But for perhaps the first time since that terrible phone call 8 years ago, she was no longer just surviving. She was building something new, a life, a family, a legacy with foundations strong enough to withstand whatever storms might come. When Nathan's shoulder pressed gently against hers in the darkened room, she didn't pull away. Some risks were worth taking, some journeys worth beginning, even when the destination remained unclear. Emma had taught her that. They all had. The silent auction at the community center proved to be a turning point for Emma. After watching the deaf dancers perform, something ignited within her, a desire to express herself that transcended the boundaries of her silence. When she approached the dance instructor afterward, her hands moving with newfound confidence, Sophia felt a surge of pride that overwhelmed any lingering concerns about the board meeting earlier that day. The following weeks brought a whirlwind of change. Emma began dance lessons twice weekly at the center, working with a teacher who specialized in visual rhythm and vibration-based choreography. Her natural grace, previously hidden behind shyness, emerged with startling beauty. Sophia rearranged her schedule to attend every lesson, sitting quietly in the back of the room, marveling at her daughter's transformation. Meanwhile, the corporate fallout from Sophia's victory continued to ripple through Wells Estates. Victor Hamilton had retreated to a cold professional courtesy in meetings, but his eyes tracked Sophia's every move with calculating intensity. She knew better than to believe he had surrendered. He was merely regrouping, searching for vulnerabilities in her new vision. The inclusive redesign of the Westside development had gained momentum, with Nakamura's increased investment drawing positive press and the attention of disability rights organizations. Sophia had assembled a consultation team that included deaf architects and universal design specialists. Nathan, with his background in architecture and intimate understanding of deaf spatial needs, had agreed to serve as an advisor on the project. His professional involvement brought him into Sophia's world more frequently, blurring the boundaries between their personal and professional lives. They maintained a careful professionalism during meetings, but Sophia found her attention drifting to his hands as he explained design concepts, remembering how they felt intertwined with hers in the darkened community center. 6 weeks after the board meeting, Nathan invited Sophia and Emma to dinner at his home, a modest but charming craftsman bungalow in the Sunset District, close enough to the ocean that you could smell salt in the air. It was the first time they had visited his space crossed that threshold into his private world. Lucas greeted them at the door with exuberant signs, pulling Emma immediately to his room to show her his latest dinosaur models. Sophia stepped into the living room, taking in the warm, lived-in space. Unlike her pristine mansion, with its designer furniture and curated art, Nathan's home felt genuinely inhabited. Bookshelves overflowing with well-worn volumes, comfortable furniture arranged for conversation, walls covered with Lucas's artwork, and photographs of what must be Nathan's extended family. On the mantel, a silver-framed photo caught her eye, a beautiful woman with Lucas's smile, her hand resting on a very pregnant belly. Beth preserved forever in the last months of her life, unaware of what lay ahead. Nathan entered from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. He followed Sophia's gaze to the photograph and paused. "That was 2 weeks before the accident," he said quietly. "She was so excited about the baby. We were going to name her Lily." Sophia turned to him, hearing the grief still present in his voice, understanding it in her bones. "Does Lucas remember her?" Nathan shook his head. "Not really. He has impressions more than memories. Sometimes he'll say something or make a gesture that's exactly like her, and it takes my breath away. But for him, it's always been just us." He smiled, then a gentle expression that softened the moment of sadness. "Dinner's almost ready. Nothing fancy, just homemade pizza. Lucas is very particular about his toppings." The kitchen was warm and fragrant, with oregano and melting cheese. Nathan had clearly gone to considerable effort, with a colorful salad already on the table and fresh lemonade in a glass pitcher. As he pulled the pizza from the oven, Sophia found herself struck by the domesticity of the scene, so different from the formal meals served by her housekeeper at precisely scheduled times. The children bounded into the kitchen, Lucas signing excitedly about the movie they wanted to watch after dinner. The four of them settled around the table, passing food, conversing in a comfortable blend of speech and signs that had become their natural mode of communication. Halfway through the meal, Lucas asked a question that caught both adults off guard. "Dad, are you and Ms. Sophia going to get married?" Nathan choked slightly on his lemonade while Sophia found herself suddenly fascinated by the pattern on her napkin. Buddy, that's not, we're friends. Nathan signed his movements, betraying his embarrassment. Good friends, Emma jumped in with childish logic. But you look at her the way Prince Charming looks at Cinderella in my book. Sophia couldn't help but laugh at the mortified expression on Nathan's face. The children had clearly been discussing this between themselves. Emma, Miss Sophia and I are still getting to know each other. Nathan managed his signs more composed now. People don't just get married because they enjoy spending time together. Why not? Lucas persisted. You're happier when she's here. You whistle in the morning now. Nathan's cheeks flushed red, and Sophia felt a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with embarrassment. He whistled in the mornings now. Emma turned to her mother. You smile more too. Real smiles, not your work smiles. Now it was Sophia's turn to blush. How had her daughter cataloged her different types of smiles? Nathan rescued them both by suggesting they eat their pizza before it got cold, deftly changing the subject to the upcoming school science fair, where Lucas would be presenting a project on dinosaur fossils. After dinner, the children settled in the living room with their movie, while Sophia helped Nathan clear the table. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, falling into an easy rhythm, she rinsing plates, he loading the dishwasher. Sorry about the interrogation, he said finally. Lucas has been asking a lot of questions lately about family structures. Sophia smiled, Emma too. Last week she asked if we could move to a smaller house so you and Lucas wouldn't get lost when you visit. Nathan laughed softly, then grew more serious. They're getting attached. To each other, to this, whatever this is. He gestured vaguely between them, the question in his eyes matching the one in Sophia's heart. What exactly were they building here? How would they define these tentative steps towards something that felt increasingly important? Before she could respond, her phone rang. Gwen's ringtone. Sophia hesitated, then answered, stepping into the hallway. Gwen's voice was tense. We have a situation. The Planning Commission just raised unexpected concerns about the West Side redesign. Victor's fingerprints are all over this. They've called an emergency review for Monday morning. Sophia closed her eyes briefly, the warmth of the evening cooling under the shadow of corporate politics. Send me the details. I'll review everything tonight. She ended the call and returned to the kitchen where Nathan was wiping down the counters, his back to her. Let me guess, he said without turning around. Duty calls. Something in his tone, not accusatory but resigned, pierced Sophia's carefully maintained balance between her worlds. Victor's making a move against the West Side project, she admitted. I need to review some documents tonight. Nathan turned, leaning against the counter. You know, when Beth died, I threw myself into work, taking on extra clients, staying late at the office. I told myself it was to provide for Lucas, to build security for him. But really it was easier than coming home to an empty house, easier than facing the spaces she should have filled. He met Sophia's eyes directly. It took me almost a year to realize I was using work to hide from life. Is that what you're doing, Sophia? The question landed like a stone in still water, ripples of discomfort spreading through her. Was he right? Had her devotion to Wells Estates been partly a refuge from the messier, more vulnerable aspects of living? That's not fair. She said, her voice quieter than she intended. This project matters. It's not just about profit margins or corporate politics. It's about creating spaces where people like Emma, like the children at the center, can truly belong. If Victor derails it, I understand that, Nathan interrupted gently. But ask yourself honestly, if Wells Estates disappeared tomorrow, if all your buildings turned to dust, what would remain that truly matters? Sophia didn't have an answer that satisfied her. The question followed her home that night, echoing in her mind as she reviewed the Planning Commission's concerns, valid issues about traffic flow and emergency response systems that seemed too technically specific to have come from Victor directly. He must have enlisted experts to find weak points in the design. The next morning, she convened an emergency meeting with her development team. The West Side project had become more than just another luxury development. It was a manifesto in concrete and steel, a physical embodiment of her evolving vision for Wells Estates. She would not allow Victor's machinations to derail it. Would you like me to reach out to Nathan for input on these concerns? Her lead architect asked. His perspective on deaf-accessible emergency systems was invaluable in the initial design. Sophia hesitated, Nathan's question from the previous night still resonating. Was she using work to hide from life, Or was this work becoming a different kind of life, one with purpose beyond profit? Yes, she decided. Ask him to join us this afternoon if he's available. The meeting proved productive, with Nathan offering elegant solutions to several of the commission's concerns. His architectural background, combined with his intimate understanding of spatial needs, brought a dimension to the discussion that none of Sophia's regular team could match. By day's end, they had revised plans ready for Monday's review, stronger than the originals. As the team dispersed, Nathan lingered, leaning against the conference room doorway. To answer your question from last night, Sophia said before he could speak, if Wells Estates disappeared tomorrow, Emma would remain. You and Lucas would remain. The community we're building together would remain. That's what truly matters. Nathan's expression softened. I shouldn't have pushed you like that. It wasn't my place. No, it was exactly your place, Sophia replied, as whatever we are to each other now. Friends who are possibly becoming something more. Friends who tell each other difficult truths. He smiled at that, a warm, genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Friends who are possibly becoming something more. I like the sound of that. The Planning Commission meeting on Monday went better than expected. The revised designs addressed all technical concerns, and Sophia's presentation emphasized the innovative aspects of the project that would set new standards for inclusive urban development. When the commission voted unanimously to approve, she felt a surge of vindication. Victor might have planted the obstacles, but they had only resulted in a stronger, more refined vision. Her victory was short-lived. Tuesday morning, Gwen rushed into her office, tablet in hand, her expression grave. You need to see this. She passed the tablet to Sophia, who found herself looking at a business news website. The headline made her blood run cold. Wells Estates board member reveals CEO's conflict of interest in controversial project. The article quoted an unnamed board member, Victor, obviously alleging that Sophia was pushing the inclusive design initiative because of her personal relationship with a paid consultant on the project. Nathan wasn't named directly, but the implication was clear enough. Phrases like ethical concerns and fiduciary responsibility peppered the piece, along with references to the recent board vote that had nearly removed Sophia from leadership. Sophia's first instinct was rage at Victor's underhanded tactics, at the invasion of her personal life, at the sullying of a project that meant so much to her. But as she read through the article a second time, a deeper concern emerged. This wasn't just an attack on her leadership. It was an attempt to discredit the entire inclusive design initiative by framing it as a CEO's personal indulgence rather than a sound business strategy. Cancel my meetings for the next 2 hours, she told Gwen, and get me the contact information for that reporter. Alone in her office, Sophia paced, strategizing. A direct denial would only fuel the story. Legal action would drag out the narrative for months. She needed a different approach, one that would not only counter Victor's insinuations, but strengthen her position and protect the West Side Project. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Just saw the article. Are you okay? She hesitated, then replied honestly, no, but I will be. Beside, this isn't just about us. It's about discrediting the entire inclusive design vision. His response came quickly. How can I help? Before she could answer, her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. The reporter. Ms. Wells, Tom Fraser from Business Insider. Thank you for calling back. Mr. Fraser, Sophia kept her voice measured. Your article this morning contains several misleading implications that I'd like to address. We'd welcome your comments for a follow-up piece, the reporter replied, his tone neutral, but interested. Are you denying the relationship with the consultant in question? Sophia took a deep breath. What I'm denying is that there's any conflict of interest in Wells Estates' inclusive design initiative. The consultant you're referring to, who you didn't bother to name or contact for comment, is Nathan Carter, a Berkeley-trained architect with specialized expertise in universal design. His contributions to the West Side Project are well documented and have been approved by our entire development team. She continued before he could interrupt. What your source failed to mention is that Mr. Carter's consulting fees are being donated directly to the California School for the Deaf Scholarship Fund. He's not profiting financially from his involvement. There was a pause on the line as the reporter processed this information. That's not in any of our research, he admitted. Can you provide documentation of that arrangement? I'll have it sent to you within the hour, Sophia replied. along with statements from our lead architect and the West Side development team about Mr. Carter's professional contributions. I'll also include market research showing the business case for inclusive design, demonstrating that this initiative is driven by sound economic strategy, not personal considerations. She could almost hear the reporter recalculating his approach. And Mr. Fraser, she added, when you write your follow-up, I hope you'll consider the larger question here. Why would a board member anonymously undermine a project that has attracted significant new investment, positive press coverage, and support from major disability rights organizations? What's the real conflict of interest in this story? After ending the call, Sophia leaned back in her chair, exhausted but satisfied. She had laid the groundwork for a counter-narrative one that would hopefully shift focus back to the merits of the project rather than her personal life. Her phone buzzed again with a text from Nathan. Just got a call from that reporter. Well played. She smiled despite her fatigue. Meet me for coffee later. We should talk a strategy. His reply was immediate. Absolutely. 4 p.m. at our usual place. I'll bring reinforcements. The reinforcements Sophia discovered when she arrived at the cafe included Rebecca Chen, the president of the Bay Area Deaf Association, and Michael Torres, a prominent disability rights attorney. Nathan had mobilized his connections in the deaf community, creating a coalition ready to publicly support the West Side Project and counter Victor's narrative. This isn't just about protecting your position or even the project itself, Rebecca signed, as Nathan interpreted. This is about standing up for the principle that inclusive design isn't charity, it's good business and good citizenship. The strategy session lasted 2 hours, resulting in a multifaceted approach, a press release from the deaf advocacy groups praising Wells Estates' leadership in inclusive design, testimonials from future residents excited about the West Side development, an op-ed by Michael for the Chronicle about the economic benefits of accessibility, and a social media campaign highlighting the innovative features of the project. As the meeting concluded, Rebecca pulled Sophia aside. Nathan's told us how you became interested in deaf accessibility. She signed directly her movement's deliberate, so Sophia could follow. Your daughter is fortunate to have a mother who turned a personal challenge into a movement for change. The compliment touched Sophia deeply. Thank you. She signed back her movements, still less fluid than she wished. Emma has been my greatest teacher. After the others left, Nathan and Sophia remained at the table, the evening crowd swirling around them in the busy cafe. You've built quite a network in the deaf community, Sophia observed. Nathan smiled. When Lucas was born, I had no connection to deaf culture at all. It was my mother who introduced me to people like Rebecca, who showed me that being deaf wasn't a deficit but a different way of experiencing the world. They became a second family to us. He paused, his expression growing more serious. That's why Victor's insinuations bother me so much. He's not just attacking you or me. He's dismissing the entire concept that these communities deserve the same thoughtful design considerations as anyone else. Sophia nodded, understanding his frustration. Victor sees the world in hierarchies, luxury for those who can afford it, basic accommodation for everyone else. He doesn't understand that true luxury is inclusive design spaces that work for everyone. Nathan reached across the table, taking her hand. Whatever happens with Wells Estates, with Victor, with us, don't lose sight of what you've started here. It matters, Sophia. It matters enormously. The warmth of his hand around hers felt like an anchor in the stormy seas of the past few days. Whatever label they put on their relationship, friends, becoming something more, she knew with sudden clarity that she didn't want to navigate these waters without him beside her. The counteroffensive against Victor's allegations gained momentum over the following days. The reporter published a more balanced follow-up piece highlighting Nathan's pro bono work and the community support for the West Side Project. Rebecca's organization released a powerful statement about the economic and social benefits of inclusive design. The social media campaign generated unexpected attention, with several influencers in the disability community amplifying the message. Victor, confronted by other board members about his anonymous leaks, retreated temporarily. But Sophia knew better than to believe the battle was over. He was too invested in his vision of Wells Estates, too convinced of his right to lead the company to surrender after one setback. Her suspicions were confirmed on Friday afternoon when Gwen entered her office, closing the door behind her. We have a problem, she said without preamble. The Oakland property, the one with the foundation issues, Victor's been meeting privately with the contractors, suggesting cost-cutting measures that would eliminate many of the inclusive design elements. Sophia felt a flash of anger. He's undermining me directly now. Worse than that, Gwen continued. He's told them that the Inclusive Design Initiative is likely to be scaled back after the next board meeting, so they should prepare alternate plans. He's essentially creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. If contractors start backing away from the specialized requirements, the project will fall behind schedule, giving him ammunition to argue that the initiative is impractical. It was a clever move, Sophia had to admit. Not an outright attack, but a subtle undermining of her authority, creating doubt about the longevity of her vision. "Who told you about this?" she asked. Gwen hesitated. "The site manager. He's worked with us for 10 years, knows your father hired him personally." He felt torn between Victor's instructions and loyalty to the Wells family. The mention of her father sent a pang through Sophia. What would he have thought of her current path? The old-school developer who built Wells Estates on high-end luxury properties might not have understood her evolving vision. Or would he? He had always believed in building to the highest standards and creating spaces that would stand the test of time. Perhaps inclusive excellence was the natural evolution of his philosophy. Tell the site manager to proceed according to the original plan, she decided, and schedule a full team visit to the Oakland site for Monday morning. It's time I got more hands-on with these projects. The weekend brought a welcome respite from corporate warfare. Emma had her first dance recital at the community center, a simple performance for families and friends. She had been practicing for weeks, her determination to master the choreography leading to late nights of rehearsal in their living room. Sophia sat beside Nathan and Lucas in the audience, her heart pounding as Emma took her position on stage. The music began felt through vibrations in the floor rather than heard by several of the performers, and Emma began to move. The transformation was breathtaking. Her daughter, who had spent years shrinking from attention, now commanded the space with grace and confidence. Her movements told a story of emergence of a butterfly breaking free from its chrysalis that brought tears to Sophia's eyes. When the performance ended, the audience rose in a standing ovation, hands raised and shaking in the visual applause of deaf culture. Emma's face shone with joy as she took her bow, her eyes finding Sophia's in the crowd, seeking her mother's approval and finding it overflowing. At the reception afterwards, Sophia found herself surrounded by parents from the center, many of whom she now knew by name. They complimented Emma's performance, shared stories of their own children's journeys, invited Sophia to community events. Somewhere along this unexpected path, she had found not just a language to communicate with her daughter, but an entire community where they both belonged. Nathan appeared at her side, handing her a cup of punch. "She was magnificent," he said simply. Sophia nodded, unable to find words adequate to express her pride, her gratitude, her wonder at the girl Emma was becoming. "I was thinking," Nathan continued, his tone deliberately casual. "The children have been asking about that camping trip we mentioned. With the recital finished, maybe next weekend would be a good time. I know a quiet spot in Yosemite where we could see the stars without crowds. Camping. In the wilderness. Without Wi-Fi or cell service or emergency board meetings." The old Sophia would have found a dozen reasons to decline. The new Sophia found herself nodding. "Let's do it. Emma would love that. So would I." The smile that spread across Nathan's face was worth any corporate battle she might face on Monday. Some victories were measured not in stock points or project approvals, but in moments of genuine connection in the building of something far more lasting than towers of steel and glass. As they drove home that night, Emma dozed in the passenger seat, exhausted from her performance, but wearing a contented smile even in sleep. Sophia glanced at her daughter, then at the dance program on the dashboard with Emma's name printed among the performers. In the quiet of the car, with the city lights gliding past like earthbound stars, Sophia felt a certainty settle into her bones. Whatever challenges Victor might throw at her, whatever difficult choices lay ahead, she was on the right path at last. Not just for Wells Estates, but for herself, for Emma. For the family they were carefully, tentatively building with Nathan and Lucas. The road would not be smooth, Victor would see to that, but for the first time in 8 years, Sophia felt fully equipped to navigate its twists and turns. She had found her voice again, not in the boardroom declarations that had built her corporate reputation, but in the silent language of hands speaking from the heart. The preparations for the camping trip brought a lightness to the Wells mansion that Sophia couldn't remember experiencing since before her husband's death. Emma threw herself into research about Yosemite, creating detailed lists of wildlife they might encounter and constellations they could observe away from city lights. Her enthusiasm was infectious, drawing Sophia into late-night shopping trips for sleeping bags and hiking boots equipment that had never before been necessary in their carefully curated urban existence. The Friday morning of their departure dawned bright and clear, a perfect early autumn day. Sophia had delegated her weekend responsibilities, informing the board she would be unreachable for 48 hours, a declaration of independence that would have been unthinkable just months ago. As she loaded their gear into her rarely used SUV, Emma practically vibrated with excitement, her hands flying in questions about bears' campfires and whether Lucas had ever seen the Milky Way. Nathan and Lucas arrived precisely at the agreed time, their well-worn camping equipment speaking to many previous wilderness adventures. Lucas immediately engaged Emma in an animated discussion about the walking stick he had made her decorated with carefully painted symbols representing their friendship. "Ready for the great wilderness adventure?" Nathan asked, helping Sophia arrange the last of their bags in the vehicle. She gestured at her pristine hiking boots and brand new backpack. "Do I look ready?" His eyes crinkled with amusement. "You look like an REI catalog model on her first outing. But that's part of the fun, watching city folks discover dirt." "I'll have you know I've attended many garden parties," Sophia replied with mock indignation. "I'm quite familiar with dirt. The carefully landscaped, regularly maintained variety." Nathan laughed, a warm sound that had become increasingly precious to Sophia. "Well, prepare yourself for the untamed, unlandscaped version. Complete with bugs, wild animals, and not a single conference call for miles." "Sounds terrifying," she said, but her smile betrayed her growing anticipation. The drive to Yosemite took just over 3 hours, the cityscape gradually giving way to rolling countryside and eventually the dramatic topography of the Sierra Nevada. Emma and Lucas maintained a steady conversation in the back seat, their hands flying into discussions about everything from dinosaurs to the cloud formations visible through the windows. Sophia found herself relaxing into the passenger seat, the constant tension she carried between her shoulder blades easing with each mile that separated her from Wells Estates and Victor's machinations. Nathan drove with calm confidence, occasionally pointing out landmarks or wildlife, sharing stories of previous camping trips with Lucas. By mid-afternoon, they had reached Nathan's promised quiet spot, a small, secluded campground near a tributary of the Merced River, far from the valley's more popular tourist destinations. Tall pines created dappled shade over the clearing, and the distant sound of running water provided a soothing backdrop. Setting up camp proved to be Sophia's first humbling experience of the weekend. While Nathan efficiently assembled his tent in minutes, she found herself tangled in poles and canvas, the seemingly simple instructions incomprehensible in practice. After watching her struggle valiantly for 10 minutes, Nathan approached with a gentle offer of assistance. "It's not as intuitive as the manufacturer suggests," he said diplomatically. "That's an understatement," Sophia muttered, blowing a strand of hair from her face. "I've negotiated billion-dollar deals less complicated than this tent." Working together, they managed to erect what Nathan charitably called a uniquely architectural interpretation of a camping shelter. The slightly lopsided structure made Emma dissolve into silent giggles, her shoulders shaking with mirth. "Just wait until you see your mother attempt to light a campfire," Nathan Stage whispered to Emma, earning him a playful swat from Sophia. The afternoon unfolded in simple pleasures, a short hike along the river, the children collecting interesting rocks and leaves, Nathan pointing out edible berries and animal tracks. Sophia found herself increasingly present in each moment, her mind no longer split between competing priorities, the constant backdrop of corporate strategy fading like a distant radio signal. As dusk approached, Nathan began preparing their campfire with Lucas's eager assistance. Emma tugged at Sophia's sleeve, asking if they could collect more kindling from the surrounding woods. Hand in hand, mother and daughter ventured a short distance from camp, gathering fallen twigs and small branches. In a small clearing, Emma suddenly stopped, pointing upward. The first stars were becoming visible in the deepening blue sky, pinpricks of light emerging like secret messages. Emma's hands formed a question. "Are there more stars here than in the city?" "Many more," Sophia signed back. "In San Francisco, the city lights make it hard to see them. Out here, when it gets fully dark, you'll see thousands." Emma's expression turned thoughtful. Her next question, unexpected. Was Dad afraid of the dark? The question caught Sophia off guard, a sharp pang of memory striking her chest. Emma rarely asked about her father, and Sophia had never been certain how much the girl actually remembered of him. No, she signed after a moment. He loved the night sky. He knew all the constellations, all the stories about the stars. Emma nodded, processing this connection to the father she'd lost so young. Will you tell me the stories tonight? Sophia swallowed against the tightness in her throat. I'll try to remember them. They returned to camp with their kindling to find Nathan coaxing a small flame to life amid a carefully constructed teepee of stalks and dry leaves. Lucas watched with rapt attention, positioned at a safe distance, but close enough to feel the growing warmth. The fire-building expert returns, Nathan announced with a grin. And with perfect timing, we're just getting the real flames started. The evening centered around the fire, which kept a golden glow over their small encampment. Nathan produced foil-wrapped potatoes and corn to roast in the coals, along with the quintessential camping staple s'mores. The simple meal tasted better than any five-star restaurant Sophia could remember, seasoned perhaps by fresh air and the absence of corporate tension. As darkness fell completely, the sky transformed into a spectacular canvas of stars more numerous and brilliant than Emma had ever seen. The girl's face reflected pure wonder as she tilted her head back, trying to take in the vast celestial display. Lucas pointed out constellations his father had taught him, while Sophia did her best to recall the myths her husband had once shared about the patterns in the night sky. Later, with the children tucked into their sleeping bags in Nathan's tent, Emma having declared the architecture of Sophia's tent too suspicious for actual sleeping, the adults sat beside the dying embers of the fire. A comfortable silence settled between them, punctuated only by the occasional pop of burning wood and the distant chorus of frogs near the river. This is nice, Sophia said, finally echoing Nathan's words from their taqueria lunch months ago. It is, he agreed, his voice soft in the darkness. Thank you for coming. I know this is outside your usual environment. Sophia laughed quietly. That's an understatement. But I'm glad I came. Emma needed this. I needed this. Nathan shifted slightly, adding a small branch to the embers. Lucas has been different since you and Emma came into our lives. More talkative, more confident. He used to be so shy around other children. Emma too, Sophia replied. She's becoming the person she was always meant to be. I just couldn't see the path before. She looked up at the stars so numerous they humbled her with their vastness. My husband loved camping, she found herself saying. He had this whole plan to take Emma to every national park before she turned 18. After he died, I couldn't bear to follow through on any of the things we'd planned together. It felt like a betrayal somehow to do them without him. Nathan was quiet for a moment, respecting the weight of her confession. I understand, he said finally. For the first year after Beth died, I couldn't even look at my drafting table. We used to talk through all my designs together, and she had an amazing eye for how spaces would actually be lived in. Without her feedback, it all seemed pointless. His hand found Sophia's in the darkness, a gentle touch that asked nothing but offered understanding. I think he continued carefully that maybe the real betrayal would be never doing those things at all. Never sharing them with our children because we're afraid of the ghosts that might accompany us. Sophia turned her hand to intertwine her fingers with his, finding comfort in the connection. When did you get so wise? She asked, her voice lighter, despite the heaviness of the topic. Tuesday afternoons between 3 and 4, Nathan replied with mock seriousness. The rest of the time I'm just making it up as I go along, like every other single parent on the planet. His humor broke the melancholy that had threatened to settle over them. Sophia found herself laughing, the sound carrying into the night air, free and unrestrained in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. Under the ancient light of distant stars with their children sleeping peacefully nearby, something shifted between them. A barrier dissolving, a future possibility taking more definite shape. When Nathan leaned toward her, his intention clear in his eyes, Sophia met him halfway. Their kiss was gentle, tentative, at first, then deepening with the certainty of something long anticipated, finally coming to fruition. When they separated, Sophia felt lightheaded, her heart racing with an emotion she had believed lost to her forever. Nathan's hand cupped her cheek, his touch reverent. I've wanted to do that for a very long time, he admitted. What took you so long? Sophia asked, smiling in the firelight. I needed to be sure, he replied simply. Sure that this was more than gratitude or convenience. Sure that what I feel for you is real. And are you? Sure, he nodded, his expression serious despite his smile. I'm sure. I'm terrified, but I'm sure. Sophia laughed softly. That makes two of us. They stayed by the fire until the embers died to gray ash, talking quietly about everything and nothing. Their childhoods, their dreams before tragedy had reshaped them, their hopes for Emma and Lucas. When they finally retired to their respective tents, Sophia fell asleep more quickly and peacefully than she had in years, lulled by the soft breathing of her daughter and the knowledge that something precious was growing in the wilderness of second chances. Saturday brought a day of hiking, swimming in a shallow pool of the river, and impromptu lessons in wilderness survival from Nathan. Emma proved to be a natural outdoor enthusiast, fearless in scrambling over rocks and fascinated by the smallest details of forest life. Lucas appointed himself her official guide, proudly sharing his knowledge of edible plants and animal tracking. Sophia, despite her initial awkwardness with all things camping related, found herself drawn into their adventures with increasing enthusiasm. By afternoon, her designer hiking boots were properly muddied, her carefully styled hair tucked under a borrowed baseball cap, and her cheeks flushed with sun and exertion. Nathan caught her reflection in a still pool of water as they rested during their hike back to camp. Now you look like a proper wilderness explorer, he teased gently. The boardroom would never recognize you. Sophia touched her wind-tousled hair self-consciously. Is that a compliment or a warning? Definitely a compliment, he assured her. You wear freedom well. Sophia Wells. The evening brought another campfire, more stories, and the children attempting to teach the adults a complicated clapping game they had invented, which involved both spoken words and sign language. Laughter came easily, the four of them settling into patterns of interaction that felt increasingly like family. As they prepared to depart on Sunday morning, dismantling their small temporary home with reluctance, Sophia found herself already missing the simplicity of their weekend. Back in San Francisco awaited board meetings, Victor's schemes, development challenges, and the constant pressure of expectations. Here she had been just Sophia, not CEO, not heiress to the Wells legacy, not single mother, proving her competence to the world, just herself, discovering joy in imperfection and connection. I don't want to go back, Emma signed as they packed the final items into the SUV. Sophia knelt beside her daughter. We'll come again, I promise. Emma's expression brightened. With Nathan and Lucas, Sophia glanced at Nathan, who was helping Lucas secure his backpack. Yes, with Nathan and Lucas, if they want to. The drive back to the city seemed shorter than the journey out, the children eventually dozing in the back seat, exhausted from their adventures. Nathan and Sophia conversed quietly, making plans for the week ahead. A school art show, for Lucas dance practice for Emma, and a tentative dinner date, just the two of them. As the San Francisco skyline appeared in the distance, Sophia felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling back onto her shoulders. But now it felt different. Not a burden she carried alone, but a challenge she faced with newfound strength and clarity. The peaceful transition back to reality lasted precisely 17 hours. Monday morning, Sophia arrived at her office to find Gwen waiting with an expression that immediately set alarm bells ringing. What happened? Sophia asked, not bothering with greetings. Victor's made his move, Gwen replied, handing over a tablet. While you were away, he convened an emergency session with 3 board members. They voted to pause all-inclusive design elements on the Oakland project pending a full financial review. Sophia scanned the meeting minutes, her jaw tightening. He didn't have authority to do this. Technically, as head of the finance committee, he can call for spending reviews. He's framing it as fiscal responsibility, not a policy challenge. Clever, Sophia acknowledged grimly. And infuriating. Any other surprises? Gwen hesitated. The Historical Preservation Commission filed concerns about the West Side project. They're claiming the original building, which was scheduled for demolition, has historical significance that wasn't properly evaluated. That building is a condemned warehouse from the 1970s, Sophia said, incredulously. It has all the historical significance of a parking ticket. Apparently, it's now the last example of post-industrial utilitarian architecture in the neighborhood. Gwen replied, her tone making clear her opinion of this sudden discovery. The filing has Victor's fingerprints all over it. He has connections on the commission. Sophia took a deep breath, tamping down her immediate anger. Victor was escalating, using every bureaucratic tool at his disposal to undermine her vision without directly challenging her leadership again. Get the legal team to review the Oakland situation, she decided, and schedule a meeting with our historical preservation consultant for the West Side issue. We'll address these through proper channels. She moved toward her office, then paused. And Gwen, Find out everything you can about Victor's personal investments over the past 5 years. Every property, every business interest, every connection that might explain why he's so determined to fight this particular initiative. The week deteriorated from there. What had begun as bureaucratic interference evolved into a multi-front assault on Sophia's leadership. Contractors reported conflicting instructions, with some receiving calls directly from Victor, countermanding Sophia's specifications. The press began running stories questioning the financial viability of inclusive design and luxury developments. Two minor investors pulled out, citing management instability as their concern. By Thursday, Sophia was operating on minimal sleep and maximum caffeine, fighting brush fires across the company while trying to maintain the forward momentum of her vision. She had barely seen Emma relying on the nanny to maintain their routine of sign language practice and dance lessons. Nathan texted daily, offering support and occasionally dropping off lunch at her office, understanding the battle she was waging. But even those bright moments were shadowed by the knowledge that their relationship had become another weapon in Victor's arsenal, a supposed conflict of interest he continued to reference in whispered conversations with investors. Friday afternoon brought the most alarming development yet. Nakamura requested an urgent video call, his normally impassive face showing subtle signs of concern. "Well, son, my board has expressed reservations about our increased investment," he said after minimal pleasantries. "They are concerned by reports of internal conflict at Wells Estates." Sophia maintained her composure with effort. "Mr. Hamilton represents a minority opinion on our board, Nakamura-san. The Inclusive Design Initiative continues to have majority support." The Japanese investor nodded slightly. "So you have assured us. However, the repeated delays on both the West Side and Oakland projects suggest deeper structural issues, perhaps a management problem." The implied question hung in the air, with Sophia losing control of her company. "We've encountered some bureaucratic challenges," she acknowledged carefully. "But these are temporary setbacks, not fundamental obstacles. The projects remain on track for completion within adjusted timelines." Nakamura's expression remained neutral, but his next words landed like stones. "My board has requested a 30-day review period before releasing the additional funding. We will be sending a representative next week to assess the situation directly." After the call ended, Sophia sat motionless at her desk, the magnitude of the threat becoming clear. Without Nakamura's additional investment, the West Side project would face significant scaling back. Victor would use this to argue that the entire Inclusive Design Initiative was financially unsound, potentially unraveling everything she had worked to build. Her intercom buzzed Gwen with another crisis requiring immediate attention. Sophia steeled herself and pressed the button, only to hear not Gwen's voice, but Emma's excited signs being translated through the receptionist. "Emma's here?" Sophia asked, surprised. "She's supposed to be at dance practice. She insisted on seeing you," the receptionist explained. "Says it's an emergency about her costume for the big recital." Despite the corporate chaos surrounding her, Sophia felt a smile tug at her lips. "Send her in." Emma burst into the office with characteristic energy, her hands already flying before the door fully closed. The costume designer measured wrong. "My sleeves are too short, and the performance is next week, and I need you to call her right away." Sophia suppressed a laugh at her daughter's dramatic urgency. This was the emergency sleeves that needed adjustment for a children's dance recital. In the midst of potential corporate takeovers and multi-million-dollar project delays, it was refreshingly, wonderfully ordinary. She knelt to Emma's level. "I'll call the designer right now," she promised, signing the words as she spoke them. "This is definitely an emergency that cannot wait." Emma's serious expression melted into a smile, recognizing her mother's gentle teasing. While Sophia made the call, arranging for alterations the following day, Emma wandered around the office, examining the architectural models displayed on various surveys. She paused at the West Side model, her fingers tracing the miniature courtyard designed specifically for visual communication across distances. "Is this the special building you are making?" she signed in when Sophia finished her call. Sophia nodded, joining her daughter beside the model. "Yes, with Nathan's help. It's designed so deaf people and hearing people can live together comfortably." Emma studied the model with surprising intensity, then signed, "The mean man doesn't want you to build it." Sophia hesitated, unsure how much of the corporate politics Emma had absorbed from overheard conversations. "Mr. Hamilton has different ideas about what kinds of buildings we should create," she explained carefully. Emma's response was immediate and certain. "He's wrong. This is better. The simple, unequivocal support brought an unexpected lump to Sophia's throat. Yes, it is better. That's why I'm fighting for it. Emma nodded, satisfied with this answer, then moved to the window overlooking the city. Her next question came without preamble. Are you going to marry Nathan? It was the second time Emma had asked this question, but now after the Yosemite trip, it carried different weight. Would that be okay with you? Sophia asked, instead of answering directly. If someday, not right away, Nathan and Lucas became part of our family, Emma considered this seriously, her young face thoughtful. Lucas already feels like my brother, she signed finally. And Nathan makes you smile, your real smile, the one that reaches your eyes. Before Sophia could respond to this perceptive observation, her office door burst open without warning. Victor Hamilton stood in the doorway, his face flushed with anger, clutching a folder of documents. We need to talk, he said tersely, then noticed Emma. Oh, I didn't realize you had family business. He imbued the last words with subtle disdain, as though Sophia's attention to her daughter was further evidence of her unsuitability for leadership. Sophia straightened, placing a protective hand on Emma's shoulder. Mr. Hamilton, I don't recall scheduling a meeting. This couldn't wait, he replied, waving the folder. I've discovered something about your architectural consultant that the board needs to address immediately. Sophia felt a chill of foreboding. Whatever Victor had found, he clearly believed it was the silver bullet he needed. Emma, sweetheart. Sophia signed, Can you wait with Gwen for a few minutes? Mr. Hamilton and I need to discuss business. Emma looked between the adults, clearly sensing the tension, but nodded and slipped out of the office. Once the door closed, Sophia turned to Victor with steel in her voice. Whatever game you're playing now, it ends today. I will not allow you to undermine projects that represent the future of this company just because they weren't your idea. Victor's smile was cold as he tossed the folder onto her desk. It's not a game, Sophia. It's due diligence. Something you should have done before bringing your boyfriend into a multi-million-dollar project. Sophia didn't touch the folder. Say what you came to say, Victor. Nathan Carter isn't just a sign language teacher with an architecture degree, Victor said, satisfaction evident in his tone. 5 years ago, his firm was the lead designer on the Morrison Center in Oakland, a performing arts venue specifically designed for deaf and hearing audiences. The project went bankrupt midway through construction. 3 investors lost millions. Carter's firm was sued for design flaws and budget mismanagement. He paused, letting the implications sink in. Your inclusive design expert has already failed spectacularly at exactly the kind of project you're staking our company's reputation on. When the board and our investors learn this, your entire initiative collapses. Sophia maintained her composure with effort, though her mind was racing. Nathan had never mentioned this project or the lawsuit. Why would he withhold something so relevant? Thank you for bringing this to my attention, she said, her voice steady. I'll look into it immediately. Victor's expression darkened at her lack of panic. You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about the project anymore. It's about your judgment, your fitness to lead. You brought in a consultant with a history of failure in this exact specialty, either without knowing his background, which is negligent, or knowing and concealing it, which is worse. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. Resign now voluntarily and I'll make sure the transition is smooth. Fight me on this and I'll take it to the board, the press, and Nakamura. By the time I'm finished, you'll be lucky if Wells Estates keeps its name, let alone your vision. The threat hung in the air between them, the culmination of months of maneuvering. Sophia recognized it as the endgame. It was Victor had found what he believed was her vulnerable point and was prepared to strike without mercy. I'll need time to verify this information, she said finally, her mind already formulating response strategies. You have until Monday's morning, Victor replied, moving toward the door. Then I take this to the board. After he left, Sophia sank into her chair, the weight of this new threat pressing down on her. If what Victor claimed was true, Nathan had kept a significant piece of his past from her, one that directly impacted their professional collaboration. And if it became public, it could indeed damage both the inclusive design initiative and her credibility as CEO. But beyond the corporate implications lay a more personal betrayal. They had shared so much, their grief, their hopes for their children, the tentative beginnings of a relationship. Why would he hide something so relevant? She reached for her phone, then hesitated. This wasn't a conversation for text messages or hurried phone calls. She needed to see Nathan's face when she asked him about the Morrison Center. First, though, she needed facts. Pulling the folder toward her, Sophia began reading Victor's collected evidence, looking for the truth beneath his interpretation. Whatever came next with Nathan, with Victor, with Wells Estates, she would face it with complete understanding of what she was fighting for and against. The battle lines were drawn. Victor had made his move. Now Sophia had to decide whether to retreat, compromising her vision to save her position, or to advance, risking everything for a future she believed in, both for Wells Estates and for the family she was cautiously, hopefully building. Emma's words echoed in her mind. He's wrong, this is better. Perhaps in the end, it really was that simple. Friday evening found Sophia standing on Nathan's doorstep, the folder of Victor's evidence clutched in her hand. She had sent Emma to a sleepover with a friend from dance class, creating the space for an uninterrupted conversation that she both dreaded and knew was necessary. Nathan answered her knock with a smile that faded quickly when he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, stepping back to let her enter. The familiar warmth of his home, the children's artwork on the walls, the bookshelves overflowing with well-thumbed volumes, the faint scent of the dinner he'd been preparing made what she had to do even more difficult. "Where's Lucas?" she asked, noticing the unusual quiet. "He's at a dinosaur sleepover birthday party. Prehistoric theme complete with excavation activities. He's been looking forward to it for weeks." Nathan studied her face, concern deepening in his eyes. "Sophia, what's happened?" She placed Victor's folder on the coffee table between them. "Tell me about the Morrison Center." Nathan went still, his expression closing like a door against winter wind. After a long moment, he sank onto the couch, shoulders slumping slightly. "Victor found the lawsuit records," he said. "It wasn't a question, yes. He's threatening to take it to the board, the press, and Nakamura unless I resign by Monday morning." Nathan rubbed a hand across his face, suddenly looking tired beyond his years. "I should have told you." "Yes, you should have," Sophia agreed, remaining standing. "Were you ever going to—" He met her eyes directly, unflinching, despite his evident discomfort. "I've thought about it 100 times, especially after we started working together on West Side. But I kept waiting for the right moment, and then, the longer I waited, the harder it became." Nathan gestured to the space beside him on the couch, a silent invitation. After a moment's hesitation, Sophia sat, though she maintained a careful distance between them. "I need to understand what happened," she said. "The real story, not Victor's version." Nathan nodded, drawing a deep breath. "The Morrison Center was supposed to be my legacy project, a performing arts venue designed specifically for deaf and hearing audiences to share experiences without barriers. Integrated visual components, specialized acoustic designs, spaces that work for both signed and spoken performances. It was revolutionary. At least, that's what we believed. He stood, moving to a bookshelf where he retrieved a worn portfolio. Opening it on the coffee table, he revealed detailed architectural drawings, beautiful, innovative designs that Sophia could immediately recognize as years ahead of their time. We were halfway through construction when the problem started. Nathan continued. Cost overruns, scheduling delays. The main investor, a man named Richard Keller, began pushing for cuts to the accessibility features, the very elements that made the project special. When I refused to compromise on those aspects, he started looking for ways to push me out. And the lawsuit Sophia prompted when he paused. Nathan's jaw tightened. Keller found technical violations in some of the structural elements issues that would have been addressed in the normal construction process. He used those to claim design negligence, filed suit, and then leaked it to the press before we could even respond. The publicity scared off the other investors. The project went bankrupt, and my firm collapsed under the legal costs of fighting the lawsuit. "Did you win?" Sophia asked. "We settled," Nathan replied, his voice bitter. "My insurance covered most of the financial damages, but my reputation was destroyed. No one wanted to hire the architect whose flawed design had cost investors millions. I couldn't get work in the field for over a year." He closed the portfolio with gentle hands, a caress for dreams long buried. "When I finally did get offers, they came with conditions: stick to conventional designs, nothing innovative, especially nothing related to deaf accessibility. That's when I decided to walk away. I couldn't practice architecture if it meant abandoning the principles I believed in." Sophia absorbed his story, searching his face for signs of deception, but finding only old pain and resignation. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked again, her voice softer now. "You must have known this would come up eventually, especially with how closely you've been involved with Westside." Nathan met her gaze directly. "At first I didn't tell you because it didn't matter. I was just a sign language teacher you'd met by chance. Then when it started to matter, I was afraid. Afraid of what?" His smile was sad, vulnerable in a way that made Sophia's chest ache despite her anger. "Afraid of losing this. You, Emma, what we've been building. Afraid you'd see me as a failure or a liability. I know how important Wells Estates is to you, and I didn't want to be the reason you lost anything else in your life." The room fell silent, the air heavy with unspoken emotions. Through the window, Sophia could see the last light of day, fading shadows lengthening across Nathan's small backyard where the children had played so many times. "Is there anything else I should know?" Sophia asked finally. "Any other surprises Victor might uncover?" Nathan shook his head. "That's the skeleton in my professional closet. Everything else, my mother, Beth, Lucas, my feelings for you, it's all exactly as I've shared it." Sophia stood, needing movement to process the competing emotions coursing through her: anger at the deception, understanding of the fear behind it, concern for what this meant for her company, and beneath it all, a stubborn, persistent affection for the man before her. "Victor gave me until Monday," she said, her CEO voice returning. "I need to decide how to respond to his ultimatum." Nathan rose as well, keeping a respectful distance. "What are you thinking?" Sophia moved to the window, watching as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Her mind was already calculating possibilities, weighing risks, considering counter-strategies, the corporate chess game she had mastered long ago. "I'm thinking that Victor made a critical mistake," she said slowly. "He assumed this information would make me retreat either by pushing you away or by abandoning the inclusive design initiative." She turned to face Nathan, her decision crystallizing as she spoke. "But he's underestimated how much I believe in this vision, not just for Wells Estates, but for Emma, for all the children at the center, for communities that have been overlooked by developers for decades. And he's underestimated how much I've come to trust you despite this omission." Nathan's expression held cautious hope. "What are you going to do?" Sophia smiled, the determined smile that had terrified countless negotiating opponents over the years. "I'm going to fight, but I'll need your help and your complete honesty from this moment forward." The weekend passed in a flurry of activity. Sophia's dining room became command central, with Gwen bringing in key staff members for strategy sessions, while Nathan provided detailed documentation about the Morrison Center situation. The real story, they discovered, was far more complex than Victor's simplified narrative suggested. Richard Keller, the investor who had sued Nathan's firm, had a history of similar legal maneuvers against innovative projects. Public records revealed a pattern: invest in cutting-edge designs, push for cost-cutting OFO measures, then use the resulting complications to claim fraud or negligence. He had attempted the same strategy with 3 other architectural firms over the past decade. Moreover, after the Morrison Center bankruptcy, Keller had acquired the property at a fraction of its value, demolished the partially completed building, and replaced it with a conventional luxury condominium development that had made him millions. By Sunday afternoon, Sophia had assembled a comprehensive counter-narrative. The challenge would be presenting it effectively to the board before Victor could control the conversation with his accusations. "I still don't understand why Victor is so fixated on stopping the inclusive design initiative," Nathan said, as they reviewed their strategy. "It's not like Wells Estates is abandoning luxury properties entirely." Sophia tapped her tablet thoughtfully. "That's the piece we're missing. There has to be a personal angle we haven't uncovered yet." As if on cue, Gwen entered the dining room with a triumphant expression. "I found it," she announced, placing a folder beside Sophia. "The connection between Victor and your father, that explains everything." Sophia opened the folder to find decades-old partnership agreements between Hamilton Properties, Victor's family business, before it was absorbed into Wells Estates, and 3 different development companies. Each agreement contained the same clause: exclusive rights to develop specific properties in San Francisco's most desirable neighborhoods. "I don't understand," Sophia said, looking up at Gwen. "These partnerships dissolved when my father acquired Hamilton Properties 20 years ago." "Not all the provisions," Gwen explained. "The exclusivity clauses were structured to survive any merger or acquisition. They're still binding, but only if the properties are developed as luxury residential or commercial spaces. Understanding dawned on Sophia, and if we redevelop them as inclusive mixed-income properties, the exclusivity clauses become void, Gwen confirmed. Victor loses his guaranteed slice of Wells Estate's most profitable developments. That's why he's fighting so hard against this specific initiative, Nathan realized. It's not just about controlling the company's direction, it's about protecting his personal financial interests. Sophia leaned back, pieces falling into place. And the Oakland and Westside properties must be covered by these agreements. That's why he's focused his attacks there. A new determination settled over her. This wasn't just corporate politics anymore. It was a clear conflict of interest that Victor had concealed while attacking her leadership and vision. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and a steady drizzle that matched the somber mood at Wells Estate's headquarters. By 8 a.m., Sophia was already in the boardroom preparing her presentation and waiting for the arrival of the other members. Nathan had offered to accompany her, but she had declined. This particular battle needed to be fought on strictly corporate terrain. Victor arrived at 8:30, flanked by his two most loyal board allies. His confident smile faltered slightly when he saw Sophia already in position at the head of the table, materials neatly arranged before each seat. "You're early," he commented, a hint of unease in his voice. "It seemed appropriate given the gravity of today's discussion," Sophia replied evenly. The remaining board members filed in gradually along with Nakamura's representative, a serious young woman named Yuki Tanaka, who had flown in from Tokyo specifically for this meeting. By 9 a.m., the room was full, an atmosphere of tense anticipation hanging over the assembled executives. Victor stood as soon as formalities were completed, wasting no time in launching his attack. "Fellow board members, Ms. Tanaka, I've called this emergency session to address a serious concern about the leadership and decision-making at Wells Estates." He placed copies of his folder at each place. "These documents reveal that Nathan Carter, the architectural consultant Ms. Wells has engaged for our inclusive design initiative, was previously involved in a catastrophic failure of a similar project." He outlined the Morrison Center bankruptcy and lawsuit in scathing terms, painting Nathan as incompetent and Sophia as either negligent for not discovering his background or deceptive for concealing it. Either way, he concluded this relationship represents a critical failure of judgment that calls into question Ms. Wells' fitness to lead this company. "I move that we accept her resignation, effective immediately, and appoint interim leadership while conducting a proper search for a new CEO." The room remained silent when Victor finished, all eyes turning to Sophia. She rose slowly, her expression composed despite the direct attack. "Before we consider Mr. Hamilton's motion, I'd like to present some additional information that provides crucial context for this discussion." She distributed her own folders, then activated the room's display system to show a timeline of the Morrison Center project alongside documentation of Richard Keller's history of predatory investment practices. The Morrison Center was indeed a financial failure, but not due to design flaws or mismanagement by Nathan Carter's firm. She proceeded to explain Keller's pattern of investing in innovative projects, manufacturing problems, then using legal action to acquire properties at reduced costs. The architectural designs for the Morrison Center were actually groundbreaking. She continued displaying reviews from industry publications that had praised the concept before the bankruptcy derailed the project. In fact, many of the innovations Mr. Carter introduced there have since been adapted by other firms specializing in accessible design. Sophia turned to face Victor directly. "What Mr. Hamilton failed to mention is why he's so determined to prevent our inclusive design initiative from succeeding." She displayed the exclusivity agreements Gwen had discovered. These documents reveal that Mr. Hamilton has a personal financial interest in maintaining certain Wells Estates properties as luxury-only developments. If we proceed with inclusive redesigns as approved by this board, he stands to lose significant personal income from these legacy agreements, income that has not been properly disclosed in our conflict of interest declarations. Murmurs spread around the table as board members examined the agreements. Victor's face flushed with anger. "These are ancient documents," he protested. "They're hardly relevant to current operations." "Our legal team disagrees," Sophia replied calmly. "They've confirmed these provisions remain binding, which explains your otherwise puzzling obsession with undermining projects that have strong investor support, positive press coverage, and alignment with market trends, showing growing demand for inclusive, accessible housing." She turned to address the entire board. The question before us isn't whether Nathan Carter experienced a setback in his architectural career. The question is whether Wells Estates will continue to innovate and expand into underserved markets with tremendous growth potential, or whether we'll allow ourselves to be held back by outdated agreements designed to protect individual interests at the expense of corporate success. Ms. Tanaka, who had remained silent throughout the presentations, finally spoke. Nakamura Industries is particularly interested in this question, she said, her English precise and formal. Our additional investment was specifically allocated to the Inclusive Design Initiative based on our analysis of market opportunities in alignment with our corporate values. She looked directly at Victor. In Japan, we have a saying, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. It seems, Mr. Hamilton, that you have been a very prominent nail in this situation. The vote when it came was decisive 9-3 in favor of continuing the Inclusive Design Initiative under Sophia's leadership with a formal ethics review of Victor's undisclosed conflicts of interest. As the meeting concluded, Sophia remained at the table reviewing notes while the other members filed out. Victor was the last to leave, pausing in the doorway. "This isn't over," he said quietly. Sophia looked up, meeting his gaze steadily. "You're right, Victor. It isn't over. The ethics review begins tomorrow at 9 a.m. I suggest you bring legal representation." After he departed, Sophia allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The battle had been won, though she harbored no illusions that the war was finished. Victor would find new angles of attack, new strategies to undermine her. But she had proven herself capable of meeting those challenges, not just as her father's daughter, or as the corporate executive she had trained to be, but as the leader she had become through her own journey of discovery. She sent a simple text to Nathan. "We won, board meeting over." Victor exposed. His reply came quickly. "Never doubted you for a second. Dinner tonight to celebrate, I'm cooking." Sophia smiled, typing her response. "Perfect. But first I need to pick up Emma from school. I promised to watch her practice for the recital." Some priorities had become non-negotiable. The next weeks brought a whirlwind of activity. The ethics review resulted in Victor being removed from the finance committee and placed on probation with the board, a significant demotion, though Sophia harbored no illusions that it would temper his ambitions permanently. The Oakland and Westside projects resumed with renewed momentum, with Nathan officially joining the design team in a transparent, properly documented capacity. Nakamura not only released the additional investment, but expressed interest in adapting the inclusive design concept for projects in Japan, creating an unexpected opportunity for international expansion. Press coverage turned overwhelmingly positive, with several business publications featuring profiles of Wells Estates' innovative approach to accessibility as luxury. Through it all, Sophia maintained her commitment to balancing work and family. She attended every one of Emma's dance practices, continued their Saturday sign language classes, and gradually learned to distinguish between truly urgent corporate matters and those that could wait until morning. Nathan became a steady presence in their lives. His relationship with Sophia deepening beyond professional collaboration or casual dating into something that felt increasingly permanent. The children, far from being confused by the adults' evolving connection, seemed to thrive in the expanding circle of their blended family. 3 months after the board showdown on a clear Sunday afternoon, the four of them stood together on the empty lot that would soon become the Westside development. Construction equipment sat ready for the groundbreaking ceremony, scheduled for the following day, with city officials, investors, and press expected to attend. But this private moment belonged just to them, a quiet celebration of the journey that had brought them to this point. Emma ran ahead, exploring the space, with Lucas following close behind. They had developed their own private language of signs and gestures, a communication system as unique as their friendship. "They're already imagining living here," Nathan observed, watching the children measure imaginary rooms with their steps. Sophia leaned against his shoulder, her corporate armor set aside for the day, dressed in jeans and a light sweater. "Do you ever think about that?" she asked. "About us living together, making a real home?" Nathan turned to face her, his expression serious but warm. "Every day," he admitted. "But I didn't want to push. We've both built careful, separate lives since losing our partners. Merging them is a big step." Sophia nodded, understanding completely. For 8 years, she had maintained rigid boundaries between her personal and professional worlds, between her past and her present. The prospect of intentionally blurring those lines of creating a new family from the fragments of previous ones was both exhilarating and terrifying. I've been thinking, she said carefully, about selling the mansion. Nathan raised an eyebrow in surprise. It's been in your family for generations. That's part of the problem, Sophia explained. It's filled with my family's history, but not enough of Emma's future. It's a beautiful museum of what was not a home for what could be. She glanced at the children, now engaged in an elaborate game involving an imaginary river running through the construction site. I want something that's ours, all of ours. Something we build together, not something I'm fitting the rest of you into. Nathan's smile deepened, crinkling the corners of his eyes in the way she had come to love. Are you proposing we move in together, Ms. Wells? Sophia laughed softly. I'm proposing we consider it as a possibility for the future. A future I'm increasingly certain I want to share with you. He took her hand, interlacing their fingers in what had become a familiar gesture of connection. I'd like that too, he said simply. Very much. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Emma and Lucas chase each other around a concrete foundation. You know, Nathan said after a while, I've been thinking about getting back into architecture more formally. The work on Westside has reminded me how much I love creating spaces that matter. You should, Sophia encouraged. You're brilliant at it. He hesitated, then continued. I'm considering starting a small firm again, something focused specifically on inclusive design. It would mean less time teaching at the center, though I'd want to keep some classes. Sophia squeezed his hand. I think that's a wonderful idea. She paused, a thought forming. In fact, I might know the perfect location for your office. Wells Estates owns a small building near the waterfront that's being renovated. The top floor has spectacular views of the bay, perfect for an architectural studio. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Wouldn't that create exactly the kind of professional entanglement we've been trying to avoid? Sophia shook her head. Not if you're leasing it at market rate with all proper disclosures in place. Besides, she added with a smile, I'm considering stepping back from day-to-day operations at Wells Estates. That revelation clearly shocked him. What? But you've fought so hard to maintain your position. And now that it's secure, I'm realizing I don't want to spend 60 hours a week there anymore, Sophia explained. I'm thinking of creating a new role, something focused on vision and strategy rather than daily management. Gwen would make an excellent COO. She already does most of the operational work anyway. She turned to face Nathan directly. These past months have taught me that success isn't measured in buildings constructed or deals closed. It's measured in moments shared in growth, witnessed in connections formed. Emma showed me that. You showed me that. Nathan's eyes softened with understanding. The transformation of Sophia Wells' corporate warrior continues. She laughed. Evolution, not transformation. I'm still the same driven, detail-obsessed perfectionist. I'm just directing those qualities toward a more balanced life. Emma and Lucas ran back to them, their hands flying in excited signs about the river they had discovered and the bridge they needed to build. Can we come back tomorrow for the ceremony, Emma asked. I want to see the real building start. Of course, Sophia signed back. This is your building too, all of ours. As they walked back to the car together, the setting sun painting the construction site in gold and amber, Sophia felt a profound sense of rightness settle over her. The path forward would not be without challenges. Victor still lurked on the board, corporate politics remained treacherous, and blending two families would bring its own complex adjustments. But for the first time since that terrible phone call 8 years ago, she was moving toward something not just away from loss. The silence that had once isolated her from Emma, from connection from her own heart, had transformed into a different kind of symphony, one composed of hands speaking love, of children's laughter, of quiet understanding between two people who had found each other in the midst of rebuilding their lives. Emma ran ahead again, dragging Lucas toward an ice cream vendor across the street, both children signing excitedly about flavor choices. They're going to be insufferable after sugar, Nathan warned with mock seriousness. Sophia smiled, watching her daughter's animated hands painting stories in the air. Some chaos is worth embracing, she replied, reaching for his hand once more.